Good day, everyone. Welcome to our first UCSF Lab Fireside Chat. We are very excited to have you here. We have a special guest joining us today. Dr. Chenyang Xu was gracious enough to lend us time out of his busy day to join us for this Fireside Chat. Now to introduce Dr. Xu. Dr. Xu is an esteemed IEEE fellow for his outstanding research and commercial contribution to the advancement of the AI field in healthcare. He serves as an advisor for the UCSF Health Hub, Berkeley, the PVmed board of Johns Hopkins, and the board director/venture advisor of several AI technology startups in Asia and the US. Chenyang Xu, based out of Silicon Valley, is an internationally recognized leader and speaker on technology and innovation, especially on artificial intelligence, healthcare technologies, entrepreneurship, and investment. He is co-founder of Silicon Valley Future Academy, managing partner of PVmed Technologies, and founding co-chair of Corporate Innovators Huddle. Additionally, he served as a general manager at Siemens Technology to Business from 2009 to 2017. He regularly speaks and advises CEOs and senior executives of large and medium-sized companies on AI, open innovation, and digital transformation. Dr. Xu has published over 80 scientific publications with 20,000 citations and holds 40 US and international patents. Additionally, he often advises both high school and college students, most of which are interested or do work in artificial intelligence and tech. So unfortunately, our other co-president, Clarice Frank, was unable to make today's fireside chat. Melinda, a co-president of UCSF Lab and a rising high school sophomore, will be joining us today for this event. Melinda is one of the current co-presidents of UCSF Lab. She was also one of the founding members of UCSF Lab, along with being the previous graphic design lead. She's a rising high school sophomore who's currently exploring the different applications of artificial intelligence, as well as the potential ethical implications and how we can mitigate risks while producing just as effective results. She was a youth delegate at the Young at 2021 Forum, a pioneering virtual global youth takeover of the UN using VR/XR technologies to connect young people directly with decision makers to go create the solutions to problems that they're passionate about and achieve the SDGs. Her team won first place at the annual GSI Team Business Challenge. Additionally, she participated in MARSS 2021, otherwise known as Medical Augmented Reality Summer School, both as a participant and competitor among college students and graduates. Now I'll hand the floor over to Melinda for brief announcements and upcoming events.
Hello all, welcome, and thank you, Ainsley, for the warm introduction. Before we get into the fireside chat, I'd like to quickly go over logistics of this event, as well as a few updates and announcements. Unfortunately, we're having some issues with our YouTube live stream, but in order not to affect the timeliness of this talk, we had to start it anyways, but the recording will be up on our YouTube channel after this talk. So be sure, if you want to watch the replay, visit our YouTube channel for that after this talk. And so because we have our audience on Zoom, and we'll be doing Q&A through a platform called Slido. So either go to the URL in the chat or go to Slido and enter the event code 668944. Feel free to submit questions throughout the talk for Dr. Xu and I to answer. And as you can see, my host Ainsley has also put the link in the chat, so feel free to click that and ask questions while we discuss. And so for those who are new to our organization, we at the UCSF Lab aim to make the revolutionary technology known as artificial intelligence more accessible for today's youth, the future pioneers and problem solvers who will need to understand how to use AI ethically to solve the world's problems. Oh, Ainsley, you might want to go forward 2 slides. Okay, cool. Thank you. And next slide, please. Oh yeah, that's good. To raise awareness of AI among all communities, we invite experts from academia and industry to share their knowledge and discovery in specific areas of AI. unlike other technical talks, these talks will be tailored to people without much background in AI. Therefore, they're fun to listen to and easy to follow. We hope that by listening to these talks regularly, you will gain a solid knowledge of AI. So please help spread the word about Youth AI Talks. Thank you for your support of this education community service initiative. Please also consider visiting our website, which will also be pasted in the chat as of right now. And feel free to register and sign up for daily and weekly announcements and such. We have hosted 17 fantastic talks since the kickoff of the Youth AI Speaker Series last August, covering important areas of AI such as efficient AI, graphics AI, cognitive AI, finance AI, as well as different implications of AI. Replays of these talks are mostly available on the Youth AI YouTube channel, which you can reach by searching up Youth AI Lab on YouTube, with the exceptions of a couple talks, which are unfortunately not available on YouTube due to company policy. We have reached more than 6,000 people with over 20,000 views on our live stream, Zoom meetings, and our YouTube channel. And currently right now, Ainsley is pasting the Youth AI YouTube channel in the chat, so you can also feel free to access it from there. And in our last Youth AI talk, our last speaker gave a brilliant interactive talk concerning the significance of nutrition labels for data sets on AI algorithms and how they and their team create these labels. Their team are at the head of a new movement in the data nutrition project. They are pioneering the world of big data and creating more inclusive data sets for data scientists and mitigating the biases that might come along with it. As for the last talk, the link, you can access it in the link that Ainsley has also provided in the chat. So you're welcome to watch the replay of this great talk at our YouTube channel. And this November 20th and 21st, Youth AI Lab is hosting our first fall virtual summit. This event will consist of outstanding keynote speakers, raffles with big prizes, breakout rooms, and coffee chats with an amazing panel of college students from schools such as Stanford and more. If you're interested, keep an eye out for more information on our Eventbrite. We will post the link for that soon. And we also suggest registering to become a member at youthai.org to receive our newsletters so that you can get weekly updates and announcements and events. Be sure not to miss it. And some other exciting news, we are officially recruiting. You can apply at tinyurl.com/youthai form, which Ainsley will also be putting in the chat. We have 2 open positions for content writers and 1 spot for a multimedia manager. Additional information can be found on the form, so be sure to check that out if you're a high schooler who's interested in working on our team. Now that logistics are done, let's hop right into the fireside chat. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Xu. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Dr. Xu, feel free to unmute, and here, let me give you co-host permissions.
Hey, Melinda. All right, so looks like it's fine. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And also, I just want to say I'm actually currently in a hotel, so my connection was pretty bad. So I'm actually logging in with both my laptop and phone. So the video was through my laptop, but the voice will be through my phone. So, and just want to give a heads up. So, but look forward to have the session. This is a fantastic event.
And so now to jump to the questions, let me paste the Slido in the chat again, just in case people will have questions along the way. Okay. This is also for the new meeting participants. This is going to be an active participation in Fireside Chat. So questions you have will be answered along the way. So please feel free to participate and engage with our speaker through the Slido link that I just sent in the chat, or you can also enter the event code 8944 at Slido. So now so thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Xu. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do so, especially because of the time zone difference. So let's hop into some questions just to start it off. One question that I personally have is, how do you think that AI and ML will play a role in our future lives?
Yeah, so I think we are already living in a world where lots of things are run by AI. You know, whether you talk to your phone, you know, the echo, play a music, and you know, and also we see many new things popping up. You know, some may have already experienced the autonomous driving car, and some may see it, and some may read it in the news. But also, there's autonomous. It's the company that can do autonomous food delivery, and that was funded by the two engineers from Google. So in any case, so there was, and also, you know, we see now in conferences, actually the transcript job used to be done by a translator, highly skilled translator, and these days it's all done by AI, right? And so there's just tons of applications, but actually there are more applications that you may not see. Is like AI could be actually going to business-to-business applications, or in healthcare, AI can help to read CT/MRI image for really diagnose life-threatening diseases, or even apply to surgery to help to treat tumors patients, and also in the like financial industry as well to detect fraud, or even going to for example. Energy, or energy grid, right? You know, when there's a power outage, and AI can help give a first warning. So there's just tons of applications. And one thing is unique about AI versus the previous era, which is data analytics, is also has the power of prediction. Like for example, by there's studies shown, I think from MIT, and by looking at mammogram, and they actually can predict when the breast cancer will worsen, and then the treatment, and even also after surgery, the outcome of a patient, to survive, right? And then so you can provide the timely intervention. And so there's a lot of interesting applications. Recently, actually, the company started to trigger this round of AI revolution, DeepMind, Google DeepMind. They actually applied their machine learning algorithm to weather forecast, and they have achieved unprecedented, weather forecast down to the hours or minutes. That was better than the previous solutions that has been optimized by scientists around the world. And because this is something we rely on every day, we don't even think about. So yeah, there's tons of applications, and this is going to get even more and more.
Definitely. I think it's already amazing how we can see how AI is already playing a role in our daily lives, and just the little things from organizing information and user preferences through apps such as Netflix and social media, and also through other platforms, and in more maybe profound details such as pre-diagnosis for diseases, and also in agriculture and many other ways that we're trying to utilize AI to improve our world's sustainability. And I think definitely that leads to the question where artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, and there have been many hype waves before. So what makes you think that this one is a real one that will actually bring about change and revolution?
Yeah, this has been a question asked at least 5-6 years ago or 4 years ago, when AI is really hyped up. And I think now more and more people accept this time is real. For me, I have really grown up in the early era of AI. I was born in 1970, and so I got into the computer when I was programming when I was age 13-year-old at the time, and on a program of a calculator. I'll come back to that maybe later if there's time. But in any case, and I actually in 1990, when I was a junior in the college, I actually entered the neural network laboratory at my university. So I have gone through, in the last 30 some years, many cycles of AI. And in fact, in my when I was doing my PhD at Johns Hopkins University, when I entered, the AI name was so negative because it's like science fiction, and people felt there was so much failed delivered hypes that never came materialized. So people are shining away from it. So we actually don't talk about AI. We talk about subfield of AI, like computer vision, speech recognition, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, so that was interesting time. But long story short, now why this era is different? I fundamentally believe, and many others, this is very different. I think there's really three reasons, big reasons. One is the compute, right? I think many of you know the wonder of we're living in this information age is because of the Moore's law, right? Moore's law basically says the computing power double every 18 months. And so if it's a compound thing, okay, if you compound that for 60 years, right, because the first computer was born 1945, and so now it's 70 some years, almost 75 years, I guess. I don't do the math. And but in any case, it can do wonders, right? But the AI actually is progressing at a super, exponential rate. In fact, the computing using for machine learning training, using all these graphical processing unit, so-called GPU, or even something called tensor processing unit, TPU, this learning computing has increased 300,000x, from 2012 to about 2020. Now it's even more. So it's basically doubling every few months. So that's a significantly faster, exponential growth than the traditional Moore's law. And the other big reason is really data, right? Because when you can have these big compute, you can compute way faster than even just a few years ago. You can train a lot more complex neural network. And when I was in college in 1990 to 1993, my thesis is on a 3-layer neural network on 8-node computer. That was my 3-year bachelor thesis. But these days you can train, a really, really deep network, hundreds of layers or more, and with many, many terabytes, and so this is a big deal. The second is really the data, right? We talk about big data. I think the name of big doesn't do justice. This is like humongous data, right? So the data is like 2011, we have the entire civilization generated 2.5 zettabytes, which is many, many more than the terabytes or gigabytes, but then by 2019, human civilization generated 33 zettabytes. And so therefore, more than 30 zettabytes was created in that 8 years that never existed before. And this could be the rise of the social media, like whenever you use Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram, it's contributing to that data. And then by 2025, it's predicted to be at 175 zettabytes. So basically in that 6 years, we're generating 142 zettabytes. It's growing exponentially. So when you have a lot of data, now this machine's done, right? Human can learn relatively quickly when you give some example, but machine needs many, many examples, millions and millions of examples. So the more data available, and also the data is a lot of variety because the whole society, whether it's in the manufacturing or healthcare diagnosis, or even just your daily life, communicate with friends, all these data are available. Or watching a movie on Netflix, right? It can be digitized, it can be fed to the machine, and this big compute can train. Now, the last one is really the key, and this is really I think the one of the core thing. If you have the first two, is not enough. It's the algorithm, the advancement of algorithm. I think some of you may heard about deep learning, right? So deep learning was really the ability to have many, many layers of neural network. And for a long time, they believe you don't need many layer network because it's intractable, incomputable. But a group of researchers, figured out how to do that, and so they were able to really put a very deep network and then figure out efficient, effective way to train it. And the difference from this to the old neural network is in the old neural network, even you have big compute, big data, if you feed it in, it will saturate. The performance wouldn't improve as you feed more data. But with deep learning, in fact, it can model so complex of the data that you just keep feeding the data. And in this case, it often has to be human labeled data. It can actually, the performance just keep improving. And eventually for many tasks, like recognizing objects in an image or, labeling things, et cetera, many tasks, it can actually exceed human performance. We call it super performance. And so that's a big deal, right? Or beating world champion on Go, and which use a combination of deep learning and reinforcement learning. That's another method. So there are a lot of different method in machine learning and AI in general. But the combination of these three, compute, data, and algorithm, really made this wave tremendously, fundamentally different from before. And therefore, AI is going to be here to stay, and will be, you would not, I predict you would not have the experience like me, when I go to college and work and have to shy away from AI. In fact, AI will impact your work like no other. And it's great you guys now get engaged and learn. I think you have a head start over other people. So this is fantastic.
Definitely. I think we can already see ways in which AI is permanently impacting our lives for the better. So definitely we see implications of that too. And I also think, what advice would you have for a high schooler who is interested in exploring or entering the field of AI, but might have no connections? What's your advice as a professional in the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be daunting, right? Especially those who may not be surrounded by folks, who are doing the AI, and those who might be in remote places, remote villages in India or Africa, or even maybe in US, like, maybe in Montana or somewhere, I don't know, right? And so it can be intimidating, but I have to say, compared to the time when I was your age, where really there's really no internet, there's no cell phone, the only place I can get information is either from my teachers, my parents, or my parents' family friends, or from the local library. And the books there in the library is really very limited. And still with that, you can find information. But today, really, information is truly at the fingertip. And therefore, you can actually go to internet, you can go to YouTube, you can also connect to your friends. And there's a lot you can do to really learn. But also attending UCI Lab would be, events would be a good way to start.
Definitely. Thank you for that response. And also, similar to the first question, but instead, what would you tell a high schooler who would like to get into artificial intelligence, but doesn't necessarily know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. The AI field has also exploded. There's so many information out there. It can feel, I would say, disorienting and confusing. I certainly think UCI Lab did a good job, in providing really thought leaders in the space that are customized for the high school students. And so listening all the talks before, if you have missed it, will be a good starting point. And also exploring UCI Lab webpage. There are a lot of resources that are curated by high schoolers, for high school students or middle school students. And I think that's also a great place to start, because a lot of materials curated by adults, or professionals might not necessarily taking into account the perspective of, the middle school students and high school students. So those are good starting points. The other one is really, I think, when I do things, I like to be fun. I don't like to be boring. And I think finding sources that are fun and easy to get your interests and the motivation, the purpose is far more important than just learning the knowledge or the coding or the formula. So therefore, I think today we have more resources for that. For example, if you go to YouTube, you can find TED Talks, and search for TED Talks on AI could be very inspiring, because they're very short, often like 80 minutes, and easy to understand. And also go to Amazon finding non-technical AI books. And I think there was a recent one by a very famed AI guru, and Kai-Fu Lee. He was a former Google chief in China and one of the foremost leaders in the AI space. Had collaborated with a younger science fiction writer, wrote a book, just came out, called AI 2041. And I think talk about the 10 scenarios in the future using a science fiction approach. It's very easy to understand. You can listen audible, you can read it. So these resources, I would say, develop interest, develop motivation, find resources accessible. If you see resources that you couldn't understand, I think it's very okay right now to skip it until you really have the motivation and interest. Then you can progressively get more advanced. Also, you can go take classes on Coursera, EDX for free. So there's just a lot of resources, even if you don't know where to start. But now I think with this kind of guidance I share with you, you should be able to get started on your own.
Definitely. I have to agree with that too. I think it's really important to, especially since AI is such a vast field, there are many different applications of it, such as in finance, such as in healthcare, and in social media marketing. There's so many different applications. I think it's really important, definitely, to find the application that interests you the most, because if you're not truly interested or passionate about AI, I think you're going to have a hard time actually pursuing it and actually driving yourself to find more resources and such. So I definitely think a good starting point, like Dr. Xu so kindly explained, is finding an area you're specifically interested in and exploring more applications of that. Not necessarily, you don't really have to, of course, the coding aspect is important, but you don't necessarily have to dive into that right away. I think getting a good handle on what maybe like generics, like what it's about, so on and so forth, is also really important. And definitely, I actually would also recommend AI 2041. I really enjoyed the book. It's not as technical for those who might not, because especially since artificial intelligence at times, there's a lot of prerequisites to learning certain materials, such as like linear algebra, so on and so forth. So I do think that book is definitely a really good starting place. And as for the next question, I think, what is your opinion on artificial intelligence's importance for the youth?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Before that, was just two other quick ideas pop up about how you got started. I think one thing is obviously in your own school, you could actually start your own club, right, or own group, like finding friends or classmates who are interested in AI. And there's a power of being together. And you can even start a local UCI chapter, and UCI could support you. The second one is local university is a great resource. I've been on the UC Berkeley Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department Advisory Board for 8 years. This is one of the top AI, center of competence in the world. And we did, the department did a lot of program on helping high school students and in terms of getting into computer science, right? And all for girls to get in, right? So and the Hopkins also, right now I'm on the BME advisory board. Also have a lot of program for high school students for getting into biomedical engineering, where data science, AI is a big topic right now. So I think a lot of universities check with your local universities. I'm sure they have program for high schoolers, and I think that is also a good place to start. And talking about why it's important for you guys, very simple, right? The word, because many of you will go to work, 5 or 10 years, and then your peak work productivity will be the next 10 to 40, 50 years, 40 years or 50 years. Yeah. And so therefore, this is you're going to be, the world then will be, fundamentally shaped by AI, and will be very different from today. And so getting to know AI early, so you can learn and engage, and later when you start working, you can contribute, but you can shape it and make AI really work for us. I just want to give you a kind of fun fact. World Wide Web actually did not exist 32 years ago. It was only born in 1989. Facebook is only 17 years ago. It's 2004. And Discord, right, it's 6 years ago. It's 2015. And TikTok is only 4 years ago, 2017. And so you see the pace of how this was changing the world. It's just exponentially, coming to us. And so think about 10, 50 years. The change will be so much in many aspects we don't recognize, right? And so be ready for the change, because a lot of jobs will also disappear, and a lot of new jobs will come in. And so I think it's super important for you to get engaged now, and I help you with your what activity you will do from now to the college, and also choosing the college and the college major and beyond the work. So it's super important. Yeah, I would say the most important thing right now. Yeah.
Definitely. I'd also say that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind as you pursue on this path. And I think on another note, I'm going to go into last couple of questions. So I think first off, how did you start off in AI?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, in fact, I grew up in a pretty remote place of China. It's more like North Dakota in US, and so it's a very small city, and with like 30,000, people population. But in any case, so my father actually had a deep impact on me. He's a biochemistry professor at local agricultural university, and so he need to use back then programmer computer. It's a Casio. For some of you may know. I don't. This is more like an antique these days, right? Because you have a smartphone, you don't need that. But in any case, so I get there's a little game on it. It's like displayed on it, but it's nothing like today's resolution. It's only like dots, 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 and I think it was guessing numbers. I forgot. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And then I learned, actually they said you can actually program yourself. So I actually make some simple program and let my older brother and friends play with it. And then that got my interest. And then there's also luck in life. So it was exactly in my, I think it was 7th grade. Because my city is so remote, and in China at the time, it's rather poor, underdeveloped. Even in big city like Beijing, Shanghai, and they don't have any computers. Shenzhen, now it's a big city. It's actually a fishing village. So anyhow, so we were very lucky. United Nations actually donated 30 Apple II computers to a remote place of China, which actually landed exactly my province and my city and my school. So, and then the school sent 2 mathematics teachers to learn about this, and then begin recruit students. And I was the first student recruited. And then I became, at that time, basically we also formed a computer club. And so I became the club president, basically, and for 4 years. Well, I have a secret agenda because I love playing games. I was the game champion in my high school. So that was really my starting point. But that in the end, I chose computer science and eventually did my PhD. And then, so sometimes little things, whatever excites you could be a starting point, but it needs some luck as well. But these days, a lot of things are more accessible, way more accessible than ever before. So.
Definitely. There's a whole lot more resources than there were probably back then. And so I'm wondering, it sounds like you had a pretty early journey into sort of the computer science field, but were there times that you felt frustrated with your work in AI? How were you able to get over your frustrations and word blocks? Yeah,
definitely. So, when I chose computer science at that time, AI it was really a niche back then in 1988 when I entered the college. But in 1990, I was introduced by our chairman of our computer science. He's a renowned professor in China. He has a laboratory on basically neural network and parallel computing. So I always was enamored by science fiction. I mean, the AI has been depicting science fiction long ago. So I found this is the coolest lab I could join. There's a lot of other things. I just found this is really cool. And so I basically applied and I got in. So I engaged in the research early at my junior year. It's a 5-year university. So I ended up staying 3 years with him. And I was mingled with the student leader for the undergraduate, but also mingled with a lot of master students. But that's really got me into the machine learning, neural network, etc., and trying to really understand the physics. But that's when I really got my hardest time, I guess, in my life, because before I was very confident, I excel in a lot of things. But then when I was, threw into an environment, which was really not it's not like learning, right? I think I was a learning athlete. If you give me a fixed problem, I can solve it really well. But in here, it's really a research. It's exploring unknown. There's no cut answers. Even my professor doesn't know the answer. And so we were introduced reading research papers, and I was leading the discussion. And I got so frustrated many times. The concept was so beyond me and math beyond me. It was not a familiar feeling I had. I think after a few time, when our student group was relying on me to lead them, because I thought I should have all the answers, but I couldn't even understand maybe the majority of it. So I got so frustrated. My confidence was dealt with a big blow, and I almost want to quit. I thought, I may not be good for that. And thankfully, there was a senior, there was a master student. He actually told me, he took me and mentored me and said, this is actually very normal. He has gone through the same experience. He actually was the best researcher, in that group, 2 years ahead of me. And that really calmed me down. And then I realized, and he also said, you don't need to have all the answers. This is research. You can involve everybody. You can read together, be vulnerable, share the problem that they may solve. So anyway, so I think mentorship and be able to admit that you don't need to know all answers, it's a big turning point. And then from that time on, once I overcome that frustration and challenge, it was a lot harder, but I'm simplifying it. Then I think the rest is it's into a more manageable route. There are still challenges and obstacles you have to overcome, but nothing like that.
Definitely. I think one of the nice things, especially about today, is that there's a much larger AI community. And I really think that connecting with those around you who might also share an interest in AI is really important, because I think having that community to support you and having that community to talk to and share ideas with is definitely a really important part of the process.
Great, great.
Okay, I think that just about wraps up our session with Dr. Chenyang Xu. Dr. Xu, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to share your advice and words of wisdom with our audience. There's definitely a lot to be taken away from your insightful answers, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Ansley, and thank you, Melinda, for inviting me. I really appreciate and hope you guys have a good rest of sessions. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. Yeah,
Yes.
thank
So
you.
thank
Yeah.
for holding this discussion with us. Now to dive into the second half of our fireside chat, let's give a warm welcome to our co-president, Melinda.
Thank you for the warm introduction. I really appreciate it. So I think to dive into questions, I think there's actually a question on the Slido, Ainsley. I'm not sure if you see it, but we can start off by answering that question.
Sure, I'll start off with asking that question. So, Melinda, can you share your experiences of learning AI, and how can a high school student get involved? And what basic training is needed to start having some fun?
I think definitely, as for my experiences in AI, I originally actually sort of, my parents actually recommended to me that I do a few coding courses. And I do admit, personally, I'm not good with the technical side of things. So coding was not my forte. But definitely, I think here came by, like, at one point I heard about this word artificial intelligence. I'm pretty sure that was around that was actually just like maybe 2 years ago, not even when I was in maybe I think that was when I was in 8th grade. Right now I'm a rising sophomore. So I think definitely with artificial intelligence, mostly I've seen myself more involved, less on the coding side of things and more on sort of actually the general side of things, like in certain fields such as like AI with mental health and business. And I think definitely as for recommending like how a high school student can get involved, I think definitely a good place to start is, well, if you're here, I think that's definitely a good place to start, because getting involved in communities, not just like Youth AI Lab, but also in other sort of online AI communities, or maybe even if you happen to have a club in your own school, I think that that's definitely a really good place to start, which is finding like-minded peers like you, and actually sort of delving into sort of the different aspects of AI and different applications. Because I think if you're like me and maybe you're not necessarily a pro at coding, I think definitely still there is a place for you in AI. And if you are a pro at coding, then that's really great. And I think definitely those skills will definitely help you if you want to apply that to more projects, which I also think is very important to have. If you have a community, it's a lot easier to get access to these projects where you can think of these ideas with peers and also sort of develop these ideas. And even I do suggest also maybe, I don't know how many of you have LinkedIn, or maybe just like if you have a project idea and you don't necessarily know how to go about it and you need sort of mentorship from maybe a professional in the field, I think definitely there are a couple things you can do. One, feel free to actually reach out to us. You can actually reach out to me. Let me provide my email in the chat. So, and definitely I'd be happy to provide you guys with sort of, depending on what you're interested in, like what kind of project you're interested in starting, I think definitely I'd be happy to help you guys and try to find maybe mentors and professors that you might be interested in talking to explore more about this project idea. And I think definitely another thing you can do is sort of maybe gather some peers and also try to do some more research into it. And another way you can access like maybe connections with people who are veterans in the field, I think definitely cold emails, just email them, express your passion in artificial intelligence, because definitely a lot of adults, they definitely do want to help out the youth, especially since they were in that same place before. So definitely just give that a try. If they don't respond, like it's not the end of the world. That's not the worst. Like it's not, that's like the worst that can happen. And I still think it's worth a try because 50-50, you might get a response, you might not. And I also think persistence is really nice. Especially when like you can definitely like don't feel afraid to shoot back a follow-up email. Like, did you happen to see my email? Because maybe sometimes like these people are really busy and maybe they might not had the chance to actually read it yet. So definitely don't be afraid to just sort of ask people, maybe if you don't even know them. And another thing you could do is also shoot them a message on LinkedIn. And another thing also, if you happen to have sort of family members or people that you know who might have these connections, I think reaching out to those people and asking them to make an introduction is also very important. I think definitely asking people to introduce me to other professionals in the field has been a huge help, especially in exploring AI further. So that's something I definitely recommend for everyone. And
Okay,
as for what basic training is needed to start having some fun, I think honestly, as Dr. Chenyang Xu also explained before, I think it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to jump straight into hardcore coding right away. You don't need to learn sort of like natural language processing or computer vision like the first time you get into AI, because sometimes I think that's also how you can lose interest quickly if you're not necessarily very like you're not necessarily excited by the prospect of coding. I think definitely that's one way to lose interest quickly as well. So I think first off, you should definitely sort of have AI sort of intersect with what you're interested in, right? There are many intersections of artificial intelligence and art. There's intersections with business, with sciences. There's AI is playing a role in almost everything these days. And I think really exploring those connections is a really important thing, especially if you want to sort of actually develop a passion for AI. I think it's important to actually explore how AI can intersect with your own interests before actually hopping straight into coding and actually creating your own projects. Because if you don't develop a passion, it's I'd say it's pretty difficult to actually feel interested in pursuing it in the future. And definitely like finding these interests is definitely really important to actually start having some fun, would be my very long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you for that. And somebody else wanted to know what the book recommended was earlier. Like,
right.
was
Yeah. So let me put the name in the chat. It's called AI 2041. It's a book by Kai-Fu Lee. It's definitely a really good read. I highly recommend it. It's definitely really good, especially if you're first starting out on AI. It's like, or maybe if you like science fiction books, I think it's definitely like a very good take, especially on artificial intelligence in the future. It's not hard to read. There's not a lot of like very technical stuff to it. So I think personally, it's definitely a really good book. Let me here's the link to the book. And yeah, so basically I highly recommend that book. It's been a huge help for me, at least in artificial intelligence.
okay. Great, thank you so much. And okay, now I prepared a couple of questions. And the first one is, how do you think AI and ML will play a role in our future lives?
I think definitely Dr. Xu gave really good responses to that. We can already see it now where artificial intelligence, like sort of we see people using applications like, I don't know how many of you are interested in the healthcare aspect, where people are sort of developing pre-diagnosis. I think a lot of artificial intelligence, they're actually proving to be very capable, and basically it's also really easy to organize data with them, and also in business, for stocks and investments, and also like in social media marketing, and in art actually, where AI is actually able to create art now. I've seen definitely really interesting scenarios where that happens. And another thing, this is a small thing, but I discovered it lately, where AI is actually basically making human faces that never existed before. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it, this person doesn't exist. So let me send the link. Actually, it's really fun to play around with, and it's really interesting that all of these people are AI generated, yet they look so real. Like once in a while, there'll be like some background like fuzz, and it won't look like completely normal. But I think definitely it's really amazing to see like how all these people don't exist and they were just computer generated. I think definitely that's like another like fun thing that AI is doing, and also with like security and also with sort of sustainability, agriculture, even with like fashion, online shopping, e-commerce. There's so many different applications of AI. It's really hard to say like just how big it'll become in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a really good answer. And I think I will jump around a little bit. And the next question would be, where were you able to find the most helpful resources about AI in your community?
I think I already mentioned the book AI 2041. That's a good one. And also sort of a shameless plug for our community, but Youth AI Lab definitely is a good place to start. Definitely also, if you want, you can also reach out to sort of peers in the community. As for me, like for resources that were really helpful, definitely number one, peer connections. I think finding people who are really interested in AI is really important. And number two, there are also lots of online communities and online courses for artificial intelligence. So I think sending an application over to a few of those courses would be really helpful. I think definitely there's one course that I took lately. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of it, but Inspired AI is a good course that I found was really helpful to give like a coding course. The only issue is, yeah, it does cost money, but I do think that that's one way if you're willing to pay that. And also just online courses like Coursera, definitely there's a machine learning course taught by Professor Andrew, who's actually one of definitely the most popular introductory machine course learning lessons. I can actually, let me put that link in the chat. So, and also it's like, the only thing about that is there's a few prerequisites to that, such as like some math courses, but I also think there's Google AI is a good one. It has basically a lot of, there's a list of courses and a wide variety of data science and machine learning concepts, which it's suitable for beginners and experts. So definitely, I think that's also a very versatile tool. And I think definitely also just the main thing that was helpful for me, I think would actually be sort of connecting with other professors and just sort of asking questions and actually doing my own research, maybe watching some TED Talks, reading some books. But definitely those would be some of my recommended areas for resources. And definitely on our Youth AI Lab website, we do have a compiled list of courses and resources. So I think that's also a good link to check out with more links and courses than I mentioned right now.
Okay, cool. And so what made you want to take charge of an organization like Youth AI?
I think definitely, personally, I really struggled when I was first getting into artificial intelligence. I was definitely lucky enough to have people around me who were already in AI, but still, like, even so, that was already a huge struggle for me. So definitely, I think, especially since artificial intelligence is going to be such an important thing, it's going to play such an important role in our lives in the future. I think it's really important that we as the youth, since we're going to be the next generation, I think it's really important to teach the youth to utilize AI ethically to solve the world's problems. So I think also just for those people who might be interested in AI and don't know where to start, I think really getting this opportunity to lead this organization with my co-president Clarice, I think definitely it's been really rewarding to sort of help others who might have before been a place such as myself where you don't really know where to start, like you're really confused, like maybe you're not too into coding, but you're still interested in the concept of AI, right? I think definitely sort of helping those who were in a place such as I and people who are really passionate and interested but don't know where to start. I think that's definitely one of my biggest motivations for being here today.
Yeah, that was a great answer. So as many of you guys know, we are looking for more team members. So Melinda, how do you go about finding suitable members for your team and what resources do you do to do so?
I think definitely one just for one, like maybe if you're also running your own organization, you'd also understand that definitely looking for people who are actually interested in artificial intelligence, and people like they don't have to be pros or experts or anything, but as long as they express that they're passionate and interested in pursuing the field and maybe just exploring a little further, I think that's definitely very key. In like what I look for as co-president of this organization. I think another thing would be definitely like the ability to communicate with others, because I think these days communication is a very important skill set that is definitely very key, especially in like working in the future too. And also I think another thing I would say, depending on the role, I think like sort of as since we mentioned earlier, we had like a team application form, there's definitely like some prerequisites on there. So definitely those prerequisites, depending on what form, like depending on what role you're applying for, but definitely the main ones would be communication. I think also an ability to follow up, and also if you're actually motivated to sort of keep sort of to actually do your part and pull your weight around our team. I think that's also very important, because I think we want someone on our team who can do the same amount of work and also sort of provide insight, ideas, and express that they're passionate to also help their peers learn more about AI. I think those are really important things to me.
Okay, yeah, I agree too. So our next question is, what challenges have you faced as a team in AI?
Okay, I think definitely this one might be a personal one, but number one, I'm definitely not too good with coding, as I've expressed many times before. So that's definitely a big challenge, especially since artificial intelligence is something that has coding in it, right? So that's definitely a challenge for me. And another thing would be, first, like it's really confusing. You don't know where to start out. Like there are a lot of courses online, but some of them require a lot of prerequisites that you might not have as maybe like a freshman in high school. And I think definitely there's number three, maybe sometimes like personally, I was lucky enough not to have experienced too much of this, but it's sometimes like if you don't have connections to professors, I think sometimes it's hard to get advice and mentorship, which is definitely a struggle. And I think I just want to mention again, like if anyone is interested in starting their own project, or maybe they're looking for mentorship, definitely reach out to me through the email that I provided in the chat above, or also reach out to our UKI email, which is also on our website. If you're looking for these opportunities, I think we definitely can do our best to connect you with someone who might be a professional in that area that you're interested in. And another setback that I face definitely is sort of sometimes like a lot of the courses personally, like depending on who you are, everyone has different learning styles, everyone has a different approach to things. So it's sometimes difficult to actually find the right resource for you. So I think that was definitely a struggle for me when I was starting out.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. I think we're running out of time a little bit, so I think that about wraps up the questions for today. So that concludes our fireside chat, and I will hand it over to Melinda to conclude this meeting.
Of course. And I see that there's a few questions in the Slido regarding like sort of links and stuff. So as for a Discord server, UKI Lab currently does not have a Discord, but we actually are building one right now. It should be ready like very soon. So be sure to actually sign up to become a member on our website and keep an eye out in the newsletter, because definitely a link will be provided very soon. And as for the recruitment application link, let me
put in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Ainsley. So Ainsley is putting in the chat right now. As it says, it's tinyurl.com/UKI form. And also we also have a social media. So the link is also in our Instagram. And so, yeah, I think definitely, Ainsley, you can go to the next slide now.
Oh yeah, sure.
Thank you. And definitely, yeah. Thank you all so much for coming to our first Youth AI Fireside Chat. As always, I hope you all took something away from this event and the insightful answers from Dr. Xu. Again, Dr. Chenyang Xu, thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with us. And don't forget to register to become a member at youthai.org so that you can receive the latest updates from our Youth AI newsletter. And also follow our Instagram at Youth AI Lab and follow our LinkedIn, Youth AI Lab. And the links are in the chat. I'll actually put them in the chat. So yeah, be sure to keep up the latest updates. We'll be posting a notice for our Discord soon, and we'll also be posting a notice for our upcoming Youth AI Lab Summit on November 20th and 21st. So please do keep an eye out on that. More information will be released soon. It's really exciting. So definitely spread the word. And so another thing, we look forward to seeing if any of you guys would be interested in working on our team. So we'll be looking out for applications coming our way. And I think that about concludes today's talk. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And I really appreciate you guys being able to make today. Thank you all. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.